Hello. Um, an anon wanted to know how my ventilator works. Um, I'm gonna introduce you to it and show you how it works and what it looks like and all that. And you're looking at my floor right now because apparently, I can't flip the view around on this while I'm actually filming, which is silly. But anyway, so this is my ventilator. I will show you in a little more detail. So this is the main part with like the whole computer in it. And all of these are all the settings, which look really complicated, but most of them stay the same all the time. And a lot of them I don't even use. There's a lot of different ways for a ventilator to function. There's a lot of different modes depending on the person who's using it and how much they depend on it, what they're using it for. I don't use my ventilator all the time. I use it when I'm sleeping or I only have to use it when I'm sleeping or when I'm tired. When I'm home, I pretty much always stay on it just because it's a lot easier to have a machine breathe for me than me having to do it myself, because I get pretty tired if I stay off of it for a long time. But the settings on mine, it's set at a specific, it gives me a specific pressure, for, how much air it pushes in and stuff like that, and it's set so that it assists me with breaths, so I breathe on my own, I take all my breaths myself, but it just gives me extra air so I don't have to work as hard. For other people who are more dependent on the ventilator, they might have it at a setting where it gives them all of their breaths completely because they can't do any of it themselves, and it'll have like a fixed rate to where, they'll get exactly a certain number of breaths per minute and they'll contain, an exact volume of air for every breath. That's not how mine is. And there's a lot of middle ground in between that, so that is where all the settings are, and the air actually is sucked into the vent through a port on the side that you can't really see from here. But once it gets sucked in, it gets pushed out through this tube here and into this humidifier, which is full of water. It has to be refilled whenever it runs low, and there's a heater down here which specifies the heat. It just got refilled, so it's colder than it's supposed to be right now because we just put cold water into it, but normally it's at 37.1 Celsius, which is that Celsius or Fahrenheit actually? I'm not sure. I should probably know that. No, it's Celsius, duh, because it's roughly average body temperature, so that the air that you're breathing in is, nice and warm and stuff. Because normally when you breathe in just through your nose or your mouth, that gives the air a chance to warm up before it gets to your lungs, which is part of what your nose and your mouth are for. But if you have a tracheostomy like I do, all the air from my ventilator is going directly into my trachea, like just through a hole with no, like, nothing, kind of giving it a chance to insulate. So it has to be kept warm and moist externally, and if it's not, then it's really uncomfortable, and it dries me out and gives me a sore throat and stuff like that. So that's what this is for. And the water's in there, and then there's a second tube, which the air, once it picks up humidity and heat from the chamber, goes out through this tube, and this one has a few wires attached to it, which kind of makes sure that it's at the right settings and stuff, and it goes out here through this tube, and then cut around my wheelchair, and let me actually stop and show you. Come on. So from there, you're going to see me now. This is the tube that actually connects up to my trachea. And you can see it's got two tubes. It's got a blue tube and a white tube. The blue tube is what the air goes into me through. That's like the inhalation tube. And then when I exhale, or the vent exhales, the air comes out through the white tube, and it's got at the end, this is a really awkward angle, sorry, it's got this valve at the end called a PEEP valve, and that does a couple different things. It the first thing it does is it lets any excess humidity out, because the humidity is going to build up in the circuit, and so there's always a little bit of water dripping out of here. That's just the nature of the beast. But what it also does is it regulates how much air stays in the circuit and in my lungs, by extension, after I breathe out. Because you never, when you exhale, you never completely empty your lungs. If you did, they would collapse. So there's always a certain amount of air, very small amount, that stays behind, and that has to be regulated when you're on a ventilator, because it can be easy to give you more air, leave more air behind than you need, and keep your lungs hyperinflated, which is bad. Or it could also not leave enough behind, in which case you also have problems. And you can see these little tubes here are basically just like sensors. They're connected up to the rest of the circuit lower down, but they also help with monitoring the PEEP, which is positive expiratory something pressure, which is that little air left behind in your lungs that I talked about. So they help monitor that, and other things like other pressures and temperature and things like that. Now you'll notice, because I can't turn this around, I don't know if I can get my trach in frame, but I'm going to try. Maybe that might do it. You'll notice it connects right up to my throat, to my trach, and you'll also notice that, as I'm sure you already have, as I've been talking, sometimes you can kind of hear a squeaky sound, or a sort of, you can hear air coming out around the trach, which sometimes makes my talking sound kind of funny. And what that is basically, it's not airtight, where it connects to my throat, so there's always a little bit of air leaking out around the trach. That's just what happens. There's not really any foolproof way to fix that. And there's also always air, even when I'm breathing in, there's always some excess air that comes out around, my, out of my nose and out of my mouth, which means that even when I'm inhaling on the vent, I can still talk, because, the air is both going down to my lungs and also up past my vocal cords, which is kind of really cool, because it means that I can basically talk, for extended periods without having to, pause and take a breath or anything. And if I'm singing, I can sing and I can hold a note, not a good sounding note, but I can hold a note indefinitely, basically until my throat gives out, because I don't have to stop to take a breath. So that's kind of neat. That's just a piece of trivia. But yeah, that's basically all you need to know. The vent stays on this neat little stand all the time, so I can wheel it, into a different room if I need to. Now, if I were totally dependent on the ventilator to breathe, and I couldn't breathe on my own at all, then what I would have is I would have a ventilator mounted on the back of my wheelchair. I actually do have another one mounted on my wheelchair. It's only for emergencies and I haven't really ever needed to use it. But if I needed to be on one all the time, it would be on the back of my chair and it would have all the same circuitry and stuff. It wouldn't have a heater because it's not really practical to lug around a, gigantic heater and humidifier on a wheelchair. There's no way to power it safely, but it would just go with me everywhere, and it would have a battery life of like 4 or 5 hours, which would, kind of let me get out of the house and go places before I needed to come back and get charged. So that's kind of neat. I'm thankful that I don't need that because, A, I'm thankful that I can be a little more independent and breathe on my own, and B, when I do, the rare times I've had to use that vent on my chair, because it has no humidifier, it's pretty uncomfortable. It's not fun to use, so I'm glad that certainly at this stage in my life I do not require that. So I think that's basically pretty much gives you an overview of the basics of how it works. You probably didn't want something quite this in-depth, but I've never really made a video about my vent before, and I thought maybe it was worthwhile. So there's that, and I would be happy to give an explanation of my trach and how that works some other time if anyone's interested. It's a little bit more medical and gross than the ventilator is, but it is a big part of my life, so I would be happy to introduce anyone to how all that works if anyone wants to know. So, yep. Oh, and I should say, at the end of the video, for posterity's sake, my ventilator's name is Helena. This was decided long ago by one of my friends, so I would be remiss to not mention that after I've introduced you to her. So, yep, that is the end. Goodbye.